Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming down tonight. Welcome to this event put on by the Wisconsin Book Festival in partnership with the Wisconsin Science Festival and Wisconsin Public Radio. I'm Maureen McCullum, host and executive producer of Wisconsin Life on WPR. And thank you all for coming to see Selena Fragassi talk about her new book, Alanis, 30 Years of Jagged Little Pill. Woo! Thank you also to the Madison Public Library, celebrating 150 years of service to our community, the Madison Public Library Foundation, and all the sponsors for helping make this incredible celebration possible. A few notes before we get started: make sure to silence your cell phones so that the event is not disturbed. And if you would like to share your experience tonight, if you have any thoughts or photos that you want to share, make sure to tag the Wisconsin Book Festival on social media with the hashtag WIBookFest. And they've been sharing them in their stories with everyone to see. And finally, the bookstore Mystery to Me will be selling books right around the corner if you didn't see it. So you can pick up a copy of any book you want, specifically Alanis, 30 Years of Jagged Little Pill, and then another one of your books too is out there.
Yes, a book on Greta Gerwig.
So you can pick up copies afterwards. Selena will also be signing copies if you're interested. And that is housekeeping. All right, let's get started. I am so happy to be here tonight to talk with Selena Fragassi, an author and music journalist who lives in Chicago. She's a frequent contributor to Chicago Sun-Times, Spin, and Fox 32 Chicago, in addition to many other media outlets. As an author, Selena has written the books New Kids on the Block 40th Anniversary Celebration, NSYNC 30th Anniversary Celebration, and released just this week, Pearl Jam Live, 35 Years of Legendary Music and Revolutionary Shows, which is very exciting. That'll be our talk next year.
Yeah,
yes.
I have a type 90s, you know.
I like it.
Yeah.
And she's gifted us with this treasure tonight that we're talking about, Alanis, 30 Years of Jagged Little Pill, History of Culture. It's a history of and cultural criticism intertwined in this book, as it takes us on Alanis's musical journey, the making of the album, the intense aftermath of the album, and its lasting legacy, only in our lives, but throughout culture. As many of us know, in June of 1995, 21-year-old Alanis Morissette released Jagged Little Pill, an existential awakening of sexuality, a rail against sexism, and a confessional catch-all on topics related to anxiety, angst, eating disorders, religious dogma, and beauty standards. The raw emotion and introspective lyrics of tracks struck such a chord with fans around the world, and it continues to this day. So I am very thrilled to talk with Selena about one of my favorite albums of all time, Jagged Little Pill.
As you can see here.
Yes, I brought a prop. This is my original copy from 30 years ago.
With her name on it and Scotch tape.
This is the tape, so nobody in 7th grade would steal it after the party. Anyways. What's that? I have all of my CDs still. The dream of the 90s is alive in my house. I think many folks are here because we all love this album. I've listened to it hundreds of times since, again, I was 10 years old. And I think one thing I love about this album is that every time I listen to it, when I was 10, I have no idea what I was relating to. I didn't know heartbreak, but I felt something from her. And then when I'd listen when I was in college, I felt something different, experiencing heartbreak. And now today I listen and I'm crying over head over feet. It's like every time I listen to it, yeah, I'm connecting with something else. I'm wondering if you can talk about the first time you heard Jagged Little Pill and what it did for you.
Okay, so the first time, and this memory is so vivid for me, I was with my Uncle Bob, and I never went anywhere with my Uncle Bob, so that was weird. But he was taking myself and my cousin Sarah somewhere, maybe a birthday party or something, and he could have been the ambassador for Lilith Fair. Like, this man still loves female singer-songwriters like nobody's business. He texts me all the time like a new, but I give him credit for that. So the CD had just come out, he put it on, and the first track he played, I think he must have fast-forwarded, was You Oughta Know. I was in Catholic grade school, so these words came out, and I was like, Uncle Bob, I shouldn't be hearing this. And very seriously, he's a serious man, he turned to me and he said, you may not understand this now, but please remember Alanis and this album because it's going to mean something to you someday. I vividly remember this, and he was right.
That's amazing.
It sure did. Yeah.
So you've listened and you've loved many albums over your lifetime. Why did you decide to write this book on Jagged Little Pill?
I think this album was such a game changer for so many different things, for the music industry, for women in music being seen as a commercial option. I also, though, am very passionate about writing about women in music. I have long done so. My very first story was in 2007 on a singer nobody knew yet, whose name is Adele. You know, no big deal.
I wonder if anything happened to her.
And so from there, it just, you know, at the time when I started my career in music journalism, women didn't have the same allotment of space as their male counterparts, and I just felt that that was really wrong, and so I wanted to do my part to contribute their stories and criticism about women's albums as well.
And there's so much to dive into with this album.
Yeah.
And I want to mention that this book is such a gift. Not only is she wrote it, like I said, it's history, a cultural criticisms at times, but it's set up almost like a middle school textbook, which is very like nostalgic and very fun. It was just such a fun read. Yeah. Why did you decide to put it together like this?
I didn't even think about that, but I love that. I love that. And the cover too. The cover's amazing. The designer did this like weird optical illusion magic eye. Like you could just stare at this for an hour and see different cultural references to the 90s in there. And my goal with writing this book, though, is I really wanted to hone in on the album, of course. But you know, it followed a very traditional format of I wanted to have there be info about what happened to her before Jagged Little Pill, because a lot happened, and it sort of informed how and why she wrote this album, and then the impact, and then what came after. So in that way, it was a very traditional kind of format.
So let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Alanis, it was clear she was very musical at a very young age. What was going on in her life? What did she have within her that kind of showed to the public, like, there might be something going on here?
Yeah, she was very inquisitive. So Alanis grew up the daughter of two teachers. They actually lived in the Black Forest in Germany for a while because their parents were working with like a military organization for schooling. And there was not really TV allowed in the house. So she did a lot of reading and writing. And I think she developed a very intellectual brain early on through that kind of stimuli. And she was a fan of music. Her parents actually had friends who were in a folk duo, and she would see their shows. Like this little kid would go to the shows, and she took a liking to that. At the time, Madonna was kind of coming up, or a little bit after that. And at 10 years old, she wrote her first song, and it was great.
It's pretty good.
It makes no sense. So she, you know, people saw that in her, and the family friends actually put the seed money behind recording and releasing this album, and then she got signed as a teenager at 14 to MCA Records Canada. So it started really young for her.
And she became a very popular pop singer in Canada.
She did. She won the Juno Awards right away. She opened for Vanilla Ice.
And he didn't look at her the whole time or something? Is that what you
Right.
wrote
There was
about?
like a clause of don't look him in the face, and so Vanilla Ice. But
yeah, very standard.
He went far.
So we're gonna throughout this talk, we're gonna play a couple little bits for you, because who wants to talk about music and not hear it? So first thing we're going to play is a clip from one of her first pop songs when she was a teenager. Do you want to set up Too Hot at all?
Yeah, Too Hot came off her first album, and as you can tell, it was very of the times. To me, it gives Paula Abdul vibes. But if you didn't know her as a pop star, it's kind of surprising to watch this.
I mean, truly, too hot.
Too hot.
It is too hot.
She's 14, so it's a little lukewarm. Yeah.
I kind of forgot.
But as you can hear, it's very Janet, very Paula.
I see Paula, yeah, very
But her
Paula
voice, I mean, good God, that voice already at that age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she made it through the first album, then she puts out a second pop album.
Yes.
Can you talk about that album?
Yeah, so as that album was coming around, she was more 16, 17. So things were advancing for her. She was maturing a bit. And there was a very different songwriter that started to emerge. At the time, some very harrowing things were happening to Alanis. So she's been very candid in more recent years about very inappropriate relationships with older men who were in her camp and kind of took advantage of the situation. Alanis came off, of course, very mature for her age, and it just was not a good... She didn't have people around her who were looking out for her, unfortunately. Her producer also was very concerned about her gaining weight, which was just her going through puberty. And he would get to the point where he would count pieces of cheese and tell her, you ate too many. And through this, she developed an eating disorder that she has kind of dealt with her entire life. So some really I think we understand now a bit more about what child stars are put through that documentary and through people kind of opening up and the Me Too movement, of course. But she went through the ringer with it. And I think as she was starting to work on the second album, she changed a bit. So if you saw in that video, she was very styled. She had like the permy hair. She had like the pop, look and outfit. And then if you watch interviews for the second album, she is looks almost like a nun. I mean, she's got turtlenecks, pants, her hair is long and straight. She's not really wearing makeup. She kind of really did an about face to that early look, which I think was just her outward signaling of no one is gonna take advantage of me now, and I'm gonna chart the course. And so the album did not do as well as her first album, I think in part because she was veering away. I think you're gonna show a song on here. Yeah. There's a song called Real World where you really, especially with the video is very intense. And you can see the jagged songwriter starting to emerge, and it caused problems. So you can hear the angst coming out a little bit. You can see a lot of symbolic references. There's a cage, there's snakes. She looks like a clown in some, she's smearing her makeup. She's definitely showing a different side to herself, and her team is like, whoa. This is not okay. Let's reel it back in. Let's do this pop star thing. You won Junos. Like, what are we doing? And she refused. Like, she said, no, this is who I am now. This is what I want to do. They dropped her. So that was it for MCA Records Canada. She could have been a one-hit wonder for all they cared. Those records were actually never distributed in America. There's a lot of kind of reasons behind that. When I did talk to Alanis's manager at the time and her publicist, and they said that they didn't think there was a market in America for it because we had Janet and Paula, and they just thought it would be too competitive. So we didn't know really in America that side of her. This is before social media. But it's really interesting that all that kind of happened before Jagged, and then there was about 2 years that really took to kind of get Jagged going.
One thing I learned from your book is after she was dropped from MCA and she was going through this process of saying, I want to be more true to herself. I wonder if it did, I don't know if it happened at the time or years later in retrospect, but like she didn't care she was dropped because she wanted to be true to herself.
Oh yeah, she thought it was the best thing that ever happened to her.
Fantastic.
She's like, great, no one can control me now. And I'm not going to do it the same way I did before. And she didn't. And so everything about Jagged Little Pill was totally antithetical to how her pop star career went and what they wanted her to do. And she was like, absolutely not.
So then she moves to Toronto.
Yeah, so she grew up in Ottawa, which is, it's a much smaller, I've never been there, but I've heard it's a much smaller region. So her manager, Scott Welch, was like, let's try to get you into a bigger metropolitan area. Let's get you kind of living on your own, getting some experiences. So she moved to Toronto for a while.
And she was trying to find songwriters to work with. Nothing was really gelling.
No, she had what she calls 50 first blind dates with different songwriters and just couldn't find that pairing that brought out the chemistry and kind of what she wanted to say. And I think in Canada, everyone knew who she was. They already knew her as this pop star. And so I think they tried to keep her in her lane, and it really took her moving to America to change all of that.
So yes, she ends up moving to Los Angeles and ends up getting matched up with a writer and producer named Glenn Ballard. The relationship that they sparked, the partnership that they sparked was incredibly special. Can you talk about who Glenn Ballard was and what worked so well between the two of them?
So Glenn Ballard had 20 years on her, and he had already been in the pop world as well. He had worked with Wilson Phillips and Paula Abdul. He was actually a protege of Quincy Jones. So he was in that world already. He had won Grammys, and through the grapevine, because so even though MCA Records dropped her, there was an A&R rep by the name of John Alexander who long was her cheerleader, and he gave her money because he saw real talent in her. And so I think he was the connection to Glenn. And Glenn heard something in her. He listened to those albums and wanted to work with her. And I think what's really interesting is that they both came from the pop world, and they completely tore that facade off to make this very raw album that was so different from what they both had done. But they were very in sync in terms of philosophy and the way they thought about the world. Every day they would start a session, and they worked very quickly, but it would start with a conversation. Something in the news, something that was topical. How are you feeling today? There would be little prompts, and they just jived really well. And the thing Alanis has always said about Glenn Ballard is he never told her what she had to be. He asked her who she wanted to be. And he gave her that freedom of letting her fly without clipping her wings, and it changed everything for her.
Two of the most fun facts I learned from this album, or from your book about this album, was one, what you just talked about, the speed in which they wrote these songs. Some of these songs were written in one day.
Not like literally 30 minutes. Yeah.
Which is just mind-boggling to me.
It's very stream of consciousness, very like Kerouacian in a way.
Yeah. And then on top of that, what blows my mind even more is how they'd write a song in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then she would record 1 or 2 vocal tracks in his home studio that day. And those vocal tracks are what we hear for the most part on Jagged Little Pill.
Yeah.
That blows my mind for some reason.
Yeah, and like a fun little piece of trivia, well, not fun, it's kind of morbid, but his studio was in Encino, and there had just been a massive earthquake, and everything was in shambles, and it was like the most DIY setup, and also it wasn't far, I guess, or there was some relationship to O.J. Simpson when this was kind of happening in the background.
Yes.
So there was a lot going on in the background, but it was just the two of them. He didn't bring in studio people. He didn't have his like normal crew to kind of help finesse it. Everything was very DIY, and she refused to do more than 1 vocal take. She's like, nope, that's it, we're done. That was my purest self right there.
Thank goodness. And I mean,
you can hear it too. It's like,
totally.
if you listen to songs, they're not perfect, and there's like weird little, syncopation behind it and stuff, and it's very, but I enjoy that about it.
I do too.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful. And you talked about how the record label tried to change the vocals, and she's like, no.
Yeah.
And then she'd redo it, and they're like, yeah, you were right.
Yeah, she's like,
I
if
know.
I redo it, it's gonna sound like Steely Dan, and I am not doing that. So.
Alanis does Steely Dan.
She was 21, so this is a woman who was very adamant. Yeah.
Can you talk about her vocal styling?
Yeah.
It is so unique. And I mean, for 30 years, I've tried to do some of the things she does, and I can't.
Yeah, it's like this interesting warbly thing going on.
It's not a yodel, but
yeah, but like close,
clip
right?
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this very interesting, and it kind of like lingers and stays and drags on a little bit. And the high notes she can hit too are just. She's very hard to do karaoke too.
Yes, I've
Very
never.
hard.
I mean,
if you've ever tried.
Yeah, that's alone in my car only.
Exactly.
So we're gonna dig into some of the songs in a couple minutes, but I want to talk about so they recorded these songs at Glenn's house.
Yeah.
They put out a demo. They're shopping it around. To their surprise, nobody's picking it up.
Yeah.
Why?
Nobody wanted her. The thing at the time was, it's very different from right now, where like the top 40 has been dominated by women the past few years, and like amazing for them. But back then it was like, we have Jewel, we're good. That was the response they got. We have Tori Amos, we've checked that box, we're good. We got an angsty woman, we're good. So the major labels, which no offense to any men in this room, but at the time were very much run by men, and they just weren't feeling it. They weren't understanding what she brought to the table, because there were a lot of feminist themes in this album, and they just didn't get it. And so they passed on her. They passed on her. Interscope, Warner, everyone passed on her. And Alanis at one point was like, let's just self-release it. I don't care. I'm so proud of this album. Let's just get it out. I just want to put it on, master it, and get it out. But then came Maverick, which was run by Madonna. And so another woman gave her the platform.
And she had some real champions at Maverick.
She did, and actually, it was Madonna's label and partners as well, but it was really Guy Oseary, who currently is Madonna's manager, but at the time he was Alanis's age, and he wasn't at the level of like responsibility he is now. And Glenn Ballard got a call through their lawyer of Maverick. They were literally, she came in sweatpants to a session. They were working still on songs. It wasn't done yet. And he's like, we have to go to Maverick right now. We need to like audition for them. And she's like, excuse me? She's like, whatever, let's do it. She came in her sweats. She threw her guitar in the back. She's like, whatever. So she showed up and she performed a few songs, but it was perfect, that Guy Oseary loved. And I think it was a real generational thing, because he's like, she's the Joni Mitchell of our time. And he was the one who really pushed for her.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We're going to dive into some of the songs now, because they're all amazing. One thing I'll say as I'm getting this all set up is the song Right Through You is all about that experience.
Yes. And it's actually my favorite.
That's my favorite song.
It became my favorite, though, because
Yeah.
You Oughta Know is so visceral, and it was the thing that I first heard and drew me in. But I listened to this album a million times over the course of a year, and Right Through You, that should have been a single, in my opinion. It's a
truly
great song.
I mean, just the redemption at the end, too.
Yeah.
It's so satisfying.
Yeah.
All right, so the first song we're gonna play is track 1. We're gonna go through the first 3 songs because it's the perfect trio. Track 1
No
all
skips.
all I really want, I gotta say, as I hit play on this, every time I hear this song, I am transported to summer of 1995.
Harmonica, like literally just becomes a. And if you, the first like line of lyrics where she talks about her sweater being inside out, how appropriate, that literally was a conversation she and Glenn had. So it shows you how they were taking very much stuff from the moment.
I love that. What else can you tell us about that song?
Yeah, that was, if I remember correctly, I think that was the very last song they wrote that they put as the first track. The harmonica is interesting too. So her parents were huge fans of Bob Dylan, so she loved harmonica. Alanis actually, so she very much wrote her songs on piano, and her eventual bandmate taught her guitar. So she also was kind of like learning the instrumentation as she was working on this album, which also adds to kind of like the rawness of it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is also one of the first, there's probably a more official term for this, but it's almost like the first glimpse into what I call her listicle writing, where it's, you just kind of get this scatter shot of like these different feelings and these different words that we get, I mean, throughout her songwriting career. And that's one thing that I've always really just loved about her, because it's the complexity of who we are.
Yeah,
we are all the things.
Totally.
Should we dive into track 2?
Sure.
This song doesn't need any introduction.
This is the song.
Does it?
Plug your ears if you need to, if you're in Catholic grade school.
There's no children in the room, so we might not have to cut it off. I think one thing I love how you wrote about it in the book is you called her writing in that song the usage of a bunch of lyrical daggers.
Yeah.
I loved that phrasing.
Totally. It was like so cutthroat. And I was chatting with a friend and colleague of mine, Lindsay Parker, who was the longtime music editor at Yahoo, because I wanted to get women music journalists in this book, because in her time it was all male critics. Again, no offense to anyone, male critics are amazing too, but they really kind of were one-dimensional in their takes on her. So I wanted to get more voices, and I love what Lindsay said, which is that she was saying to her exes what we all wanted to say. She was so petty, and it was like, damn, if I had the chance to go back to my ex, this is what I would want to say to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because, you know, she was on the cover of what, Spin and Rolling Stone in the same month in 1995,
November.
and they both were like, angry woman.
Right.
And that was
the problem here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
right.
Yeah, but I mean, this song, it was actually her adamant choice to make this the first single. Nobody agreed with her. And she said, no, we gotta hit people and then bring them into the rest of the album. And she was genius. She was so right about it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say about this song that hasn't been said
Oh my
before?
God, so many things.
I know.
I mean, I don't want to talk about Dave Coulier because he can just.
I mean, but
that man takes more credit for this song than anybody should ever take credit for a song that's like,
I mean,
F you. I
truly.
mean, I don't understand. Yeah.
What I had not realized until I read this book was that she has actually never confirmed who the
Never.
song is about.
Never.
And then she has questioned and said, why would anyone want to take credit for being, in her own words, a douche?
Right. Right. Really. But he is the one who's been the most vocal. But you know, she's also said it like, her manager said, he confirmed to me it is about one person, but until she was ready to share it, he wouldn't. So fair. But over time, she's also said it became like a culmination of a bunch of people. It wasn't, in her mind, just one anymore. I think as time kind of changed. I would love to know how many accidents were caused by this, car accidents by this song, because it's really K-Rock, I don't know if you guys know the rock station in LA, who got their hands on a copy of this because it was in like a trade magazine, not even released or anything yet, and they just randomly played it with the expletives, unedited, on radio. And there's so many people, Dave Navarro, Lindsay Parker, who were like, I heard it and I almost crashed, because it's like, you can't say these words on the radio.
And these are just the people interviewed about it.
And it's funny because the other thing is that Dave Navarro and Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers are on this song. So that is one of the songs when they were going through and finessing it a bit. They're like, we need more of a real rock bent on this song. And they came in. They were friends with Guy Oseary. The Red Hot Chili Peppers were doing nothing at that moment. So they're like, cool, we'll add to it. And Dave Navarro was like, I was driving and heard it, and he's like, I almost crashed my car.
And he had forgotten he had recorded.
He forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the greatest songs of all time, anyways. All right, we'll move on to track 3. Do you want to set up track 3 perfect before we dive into it, or should we listen first?
Let's listen first. Yeah. That song just breaks my heart. And it's like,
it's so beautiful.
when so many of those reviews came out and she was branded this angry young woman, I was like, did you listen to that song? Because she's not angry. She's very vulnerable. And this is one of the songs where you were talking about it earlier, but I really describe this album as like a life's journey album, as a kind of a best friend where you can come back to it, like you were saying, at different points in your life, and these songs have different meaning and resonance. And so I've come back to this song in particular so many times. I'm very much a type A perfectionist, so it's related to me as like a workaholic. But now I have a stepdaughter who's 14, and it's like I hear the song and I'm like, we have to think about these things too, of like how we raise kids, right? And
Absolutely.
it takes on this new meaning every time you kind of hear it at different life stages. Yeah.
And stylistically, getting that, I think you wrote this in the book, the relief after the 1-2 punch of the first two tracks is that almost in a way it's jarring, but in a comforting way.
Yeah. It's a total mood changer.
Yeah, absolutely.
The track listing on this album is actually really interesting too, how it ebbs and flows very much through different moods.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool how she did that.
So if you want to learn about more of the songs, she writes about all of them in this book, so I recommend you get a copy after
Take a deep dive into every single track.
Take a deep dive. Yeah. So the album was released in June of 1995, and against all industry odds, it blew up. What happened?
Yeah, it was because it became a radio single, thanks to K-Rock. I mean, all these like little things happen that just were, I don't know what you call it, luck, magic, kismet, and it snowballed because no one had heard this before. Alanis was not the first female singer-songwriter ever, obviously. She was not even the first in the 90s, but she was the first to make it very mainstream and commercial. And so stuff like this wasn't really on the radio, and I think, this album is for anybody, but there were a lot of feminist themes on here. There were a lot of themes about being a young person. Like, those weren't topics really being explored in the confessional way that she was doing it. And so it had a huge impact on Gen X. If you think about Nevermind came out a few years prior, that just opened the Pandora's box because, I talk about this in the book a little bit, but Gen X is interesting because we were like the quote unquote, I don't know if it's appropriate to say anymore, but the latchkey kids where we had to kind of take care of ourselves. I mean, my parents, it was a dual parent working situation, and you didn't have like mom at home baking cookies, Stepford Wives thing, and you had to kind of figure out life a little bit. And so they looked to these cultural icons who maybe spoke their language, and what Nirvana kind of did for, grunge and alt rock and whatever, Alanis kind of did for a lot of young women and young people as well.
Because we're at the Wisconsin Book Festival and Wisconsin Science Festival, I needed to find a Wisconsin connection, and luckily there's a lot of references to garbage in this album or in this book.
There we go.
So I wanted to read a quote from Shirley Manson where she says, "There were a lot of women at the time, whether it was Fiona Apple, Missy Elliott, Courtney Love, so many of us, but Alanis proved to the world and to the music business that all of us were viable." Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So again, like I said, there was, even just in the 90s, PJ Harvey, Bjork, Tori Amos, no one brought in the money Alanis did. And if you're talking about record labels, the bottom line is always the bottom line. If they're going to harp on a trend, if they can. She brought in $30 million for a record label in 1 year. That was unheard of. And of course, this was before streaming, and so physical products were being sold. No one had really done that. And so, of course, record labels were seeing dollar signs, and it's like, who's the next Alanis? But I think, you can see the through line of how the singer-songwriter era, the Lilith Fair era, really had a lot to do with Alanis showing the viability of other female artists.
So she then goes on, an 18-month world tour, goes on around the world
twice.
Which is insane. Yeah. And it was grueling for her.
Yeah.
And then things changed afterwards, and she went through all sorts of things as she was on this tour as well, too.
Yeah, it was she would meet fans, and they kind of thought of her as like their therapist, and they were unloading a lot on her, and she's very much an empath, and so it took a toll, not to mention just the stress and the exhaustion of, she would go from London, there was one, I read about it, London to LA to Chicago to back to London or something in the span of 2 weeks. That's insane. And they just worked her like a workhorse for those 2 years almost. And she she said that she didn't even smile in those 2 years.
Oy.
It was just so stressful and traumatic for her.
I, again, because we're in Wisconsin, I looked up some fun Wisconsin facts about the touring. She may have played her first show here in Madison on that tour. And on July 1st, 1995, she played at Club de Wash. Did anyone go there back in the day? It's the club that burned down on West Washington. So she played there. That is the first gig listed on that tour. Then she played Shank Hall in Milwaukee, July 25th, 1995. Was anyone there? And then Yeah, you were there?
But you've
But
been
you've
at
been
the
to
club.
Shank Hall.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So then the following year, things got bigger. The stage got bigger. She played Summerfest, Marcus Amphitheater, June 27, 1996. And I know Kelsey was there. Yes, she was.
First concert was my dad. It was me, my dad.
Amazing. Amazing.
I love it.
So, you know, as we look back on this album, 30 years later, how does it still resonate with you? Why does this album still resonate with you? Why does it matter to all of us still?
To so many people. I mean, she has a residency like literally right now in Vegas. She's still touring. She's selling out. I was at Pitchfork Music Festival in Chicago in 24. She headlined. I was not ready for the communal exchange there. I mean, it was like hardcore. I've never seen that big of a crowd at Pitchfork, and everyone was singing along. I think there's a few things. I think there's the nostalgia factor. I think this
Nostalgia's
album,
big now.
it is big. You know, it's like we live in times that are precarious, and we're looking to times that felt safer and warmer. And of course, the music you grew up with in your teens is always kind of your soundtrack. So I think there's that factor. But she's been evangelized by so many current singer-songwriters, from Taylor Swift to Pink to Halsey to Kelly Clarkson to Olivia Rodrigo, and they all espouse her merits and what she did for their careers. So I think this new generation is like learning about her through that kind of gateway. And she's remained very, very current. And like I said, I think no matter what era of your personal life you listen to it, these songs just hit different. She like hit on these universal topics in a way I've never sort of felt about another album.
One of the quotes in here from Olivia Rodrigo in your book, she says that she was 12 when she heard You Oughta Know on the radio for the first time. And of course, I went and did the math. I'm like, so she heard You Oughta Know in 2015 on the radio, and it hit her the same way.
Yeah.
It hit so many of us 20 years after the album came out. Like, that is so beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. It was so raw and authentic. And I think you think of a lot of other albums that were very polished. And, you know, we're in an era where, like, we talk about AI and, like, what is real anymore, right? And, like, that album is, like, so real. There was no polish on it. It was no label nowadays would, I think, do that for an artist. They'd be like, you want to do one takes and we're not, what are you talking about? They wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, and no auto-tune.
Right, exactly. Your vocals sound really rough here. Who
Yeah.
cares?
Yeah. Before we dive into audience Q&A, should we listen to an entire song and watch one of the greatest music videos of all time?
So good.
I do love that I learned in your book that Glenn and Alanis do not care if you criticize their use of irony versus coincidence.
Yeah, she
They
got
don't
it
care.
wrong.
They don't care.
She got it wrong. But think about, we all think of ironic as being that now.
Totally.
So, and if you haven't seen it yet, you should see her like COVID era redo of this song. It's hysterical.
Oh, I have not.
Oh yeah, she like redoes the lyrics for like the COVID era,
Fantastic.
like waiting for your like UPS package, and yeah, it's funny. I won't give it away. but
Amazing.
Listen to it. Yeah.
Well, we have about 15 minutes for audience questions. If anyone has a question for Selena Fragassi on her career, her writing style, on Alanis, anything you want to ask her. Kelsey.
Oh, you got a
She's
mic, you
bringing
got
a
mic.
microphone.
I'm very loud. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Should I be quieter now?
No.
So Maria and I were talking about and just thinking about everything, but we were 10, 11, living 3 doors from each other when this album came out. But it really felt we shouldn't, like, I kind of like joked too. It's like when I watch Clueless back over, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't get any of this. Like, but I felt it, like, and so yeah, it's not the best reference, but but even still, like because I listened to even What I Really Want, it sounds like a cranky teenager yelling at their parents a little bit, and then even with that, that video too, it makes me think of that because like I'm in my parents' car, driving back and forth, and so it just really feels that way. And so I guess with her kind of a vibe of that, and she was so young, how did everyone say yes to her?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Like you were like, oh, and she said this, and then they did it. I'm like, how? I can't do that now.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, she had no voice. Like when she was a pop star, everyone controlled everything. And granted, she was a kid. And so I think when it came time to write Jagged, she was like, no, this is my show now. And really there was, the great thing about how this album was made is there was no label behind it yet, so nobody could dictate what she was doing. For all intents and purposes, it was a passion project. It could have gone nowhere. And it was only until then Maverick got involved. And Maverick was a fledgling label at the time. They had Candlebox, I think was their like, which I love Candlebox, but Candlebox was like, yeah, Candlebox was like the one band they had that like went anywhere. And so I think they were like, well, she seems serious. She has conviction. She's good. Let's run with it. So I think it was just the dynamic of, yeah, there was no label in the beginning to dictate anything. And then she had kind of an indie, for lack of a better word, who she was working with. So she had such conviction. It's insane. Yeah. It's crazy.
And you wrote how she wanted to dial back You Oughta Know, but Glenn's like, no, leave it.
Yeah, she was almost like, there were parts where she's like, am I revealing a bit too much? And he talked her out of it, thankfully. Yeah, so there were moments where like she did question some things she wasn't. Like she's like, no, You Oughta Know is going to be a single. But yeah, there were times, so there was like kind of that interplay as well.
Yeah.
I think she trusted him though, too, because
Yeah.
like he knew what he was doing, and also he was very much a supporter, so.
Thank you, Sam.
First, I just had a couple thoughts. I just listened to this twice on the way over here to remind myself. I also really like Right Through You because I'm like, this feels like me too. Like it just feels so modern.
Yeah.
I also like like your uncle, and then you said you went with your dad, and I was like, I found this. I saw it on VH1 in college. They had like 100 Greatest Songs of the 90s.
Yeah.
And I raided my dad's CD cabinet.
And he had it?
And I found Jewel, and I found this, and I was like, you have this album? And he's like,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, your uncle thought I was crazy. And my dad loves female songwriters, so I'm just like, it's interesting how, oh, what an angry woman. And then we have these men in our lives. We're like, no, this is really good.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But my question was, like, I don't know how much of a musician, like you said, she wrote things on the piano, which a lot of this album is so rock. Like, did she play a lot of this stuff on it? Or if not, does she have any power over how, like, the song sounded? Like, I don't understand how that gets written. If she's doing the vocals,
Yeah.
but then how do you get all that backing track? Does she just have a band come in, then they make it up? Or does she have power over how it sounded?
There were studio musicians that came in later, right? So it was her and Glenn kind of writing it and Glenn doing the instrumentation in the beginning. But when it was time to master it and get a sound on there, they brought in some people. Dave and Flea were on there. There's others who I am blanking on at the moment. But there's a whole slew
keyboardist
of
from
people.
Tom Petty.
Oh, yeah. It was
Ben-
Beaumont?
Trent Tench.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So there were some notable people who kind of just like lent their hand through because they had connections to Glenn or whomever. And then she learned as time went on how to play guitar, and she was playing harmonica on this though. And then she had a band that was cobbled together for her tour because her team thought it was very important that they keep this rock vibe going because alternative radio picked up on it and because of the strong emotions on this album. And so her band actually, really interestingly, her drummer was actually Taylor Hawkins before he joined Foo Fighters. And so she actually appeared at his memorial after he had passed away in LA. A really moving thing. And he always he always felt bad because he was like, she gave me my first real shot. And what happened was Foo Fighters had released their debut album with a different drummer the same year, and they played a lot of festivals together, and Taylor and Dave had this bromance growing, and Alanis knew it. She's like, so when are you leaving to join Foo Fighters? Because she was ready. And he's like, I always felt really bad about abandoning her. And to her, it was like water under the bridge, and they had a great relationship later, yeah.
Do you know if when Glenn and Alanis were writing these songs together, would she like hum something, or would she come up with the melody vocally, or was she following his lead on like a guitar riff?
Yeah, that's great. I don't know. I don't know that I found that in my research, but I know.
I want to be in that room.
I know, right? It would have been cool to be a fly on the wall in that room, absolutely. But yeah, I would imagine she was coming up with like the melodies while they were working on it. But everything was so organic, and like I said, in 30 minutes. I don't know how they did this in 30 minutes, but they did.
Truly.
They did like a song a day.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the wonderful talk here today. I guess this is kind of more of a general question. So, like Alanis Morissette from Canada, And I'm especially as like a music journalist, there's like, you have like Celine Dion and
Yeah.
like Rush and Justin Bieber and like Lorde, and you have all these, people that seem to like have this like cultural acceleration through America, but like, do you feel like that's kind of like maybe not as reciprocal? Like, is there something like, is it part of her experience had to do with coming from outside of America and like maybe being able to hit like a chord that you wouldn't if you were like immersed in this culture?
I think what was interesting is that in Canada, when Jagged Little Pill came out, they all hated it because they remembered her as a pop star. And they're like, what the hell is this? And they wouldn't play it up there. It took a really long time for Canada to care about this album. It took America caring first, but I think it's only because we didn't know about her pop star past that we took her seriously. Because can you imagine if this came out now and people would have gone and looked at who she was before and would have been like, wait, what? Like the disconnect, kind of like a Miley Cyrus, right? Like it took a long time to take her seriously as a singer-songwriter because she was Hannah Montana. Like I think it would have had backlash if she hadn't done that route. Yeah. Yeah.
Semi-related, we're all waiting for that Mariah Carey grunge album to come out. Is it? I thought just there was leaks. Well, anyways, I know what I'm doing tonight on my computer.
That's my next book.
Yes, please.
First, as a guy, I want to say I agree with everything you said about the men earlier.
Oh, thank you. And no offense. Like
agree.
it takes all kinds. Yeah. But in that era, it was so
I have friends
different.
who are men.
So different.
So I noticed when it comes to folk, like the really
Yeah.
old guard, like Carole King, Joni Mitchell, I mean, they've always been at the top. But then after that, it seems like you have Tracy Chapman, Alanis, Suzanne Vega. And when they come out, they're like hit a commercial peak and then
Yeah.
what's going on as opposed to what it was in the 60s and 70s?
That's a great question. I think, I don't know in terms of the trend of that. I would think that, unfortunately, the lifespan of a lot of artists is so short, not because they want it to be, but A&R reps get bored and they move on, and they find the next hot commodity, right? I think with Alanis, what happened is she got happy. So we didn't talk about this, but after Jagged wrapped up, she was like, I don't even know if I want to make another album. I'm exhausted. This sucks. And her brother, she has a twin brother, Wade, who went to India. He studied yoga there. And it was like, and actually, as she was becoming famous, because he couldn't kind of handle his twin being this famous person now. So he went to India. It changed his life, and he recommended it to her. And so she went to India, and it was for like a year, and it was life-changing. She actually was supposed to talk to Mother Teresa the night before she died.
Oh my.
She wanted to volunteer with her, and it didn't happen. And it filled her with a different just life lens and gratitude. And so what came after, supposed former infatuation junkie, longest title ever, was a mood shift. And I think a lot of people who gleaned to maybe some of the more fury of Jagged Little Pill or the more rage or power behind it were kind of off-put by this change in tone. And so I think it just didn't do as well. And but to Alanis' credit, she's always just been who she is, and so she releases what she feels. But I don't think commercially, and also, who could sell an album, 33 million copies in a year, and she did. That's just impossible to do again.
Thanks for this presentation. This is really great. I'm just wondering, did you find out anything about or research the Broadway Jagged Little Pill aspect?
Yeah.
And like what's going on with that? Because I'm just Googling it right now. Oh, I gotta go see it, but it's no longer.
Yeah, and I saw it twice. I saw it in LA and Chicago. That's fascinating. So what I found really cool about that is that you could take this album that had so many different moods on it, and Diablo Cody was a screenwriter who wrote Juno and United States of Terra. She created a whole narrative out of this album, which she personified it. That's how meaty this album is. And yeah, it was on Broadway. It was the most nominated of the season, but it came out during COVID, so it kind of had like a start-stop. But it just wrapped up in 2024. So it traveled and it was on stage for a long time. But it was interesting because it took all the themes that were on there but modernized it. And so with this whole family story behind it, and I thought it was amazing.
But it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it'll have a revival, hopefully.
My 13-year-old world. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was really good.
Tell them.
I know, right? We're putting it to the ether. Alanis,
call
if you're listening.
Alanis.
I know, yeah. Speed dial.
I'd also echo, thank you very much for this evening.
Thanks for coming.
One of the things I'd be interested in, because I was 30, I was older than most people probably
Yeah.
at the time when it came out, and I remember that album hitting me quite hard, like this is a solid album.
Yeah.
And the more I listened to the lyrics, I became more and more impressed. And I'm curious if she ever talked about who inspired her, and then maybe more so why those individuals did, because she was such a breakout person at
Yeah.
that time. that
Yeah,
it'd be
her
interesting.
like musical influences.
Musical, or just what drove her? Like, were there people who drove her, and then more specifically, why those individuals?
Yeah. Well, she did have musical influences. I think one of the most random is Olivia Newton-John. She was a huge fan of Sandy from Grease. It was her first movie she ever saw. Yeah, their dad took the twins, her and Wade, to see it when they were 4, when it came out in the theater. And then they took a family trip to California, and she's like, we got to go to Sandy's house. So they literally went to Malibu, and she rang the doorbell. She was a huge fan. She also did love Joni Mitchell and Carole King and Madonna. And she did love Tori as well. And so there was a lot of, like, in the melting pot of her kind of sonic style and lyrical writing. But she also was very insular as a person. Like, she talks about the fact that she literally had so much anxiety about seeing all these people in LA that she had to go to a hospital at one point. She was also robbed in LA.
Oh yeah.
We didn't talk about that, but like
No, you should share that story because it's a wild twist of
she
fate.
had like just moved to LA. Already, her and Glenn were working at rapid pace, so she had a lot of the lyrics written for this album already in a notebook. And she was walking out of the studio one night, and she had 2 bags on her: a backpack with her lyrics to Jagged Little Pill, and she had a gym bag with like gym shoes and athletic wear. And she got robbed at gunpoint. And all she kept thinking was, "Please, God, don't take my backpack." And they didn't. They took the other bag. But she would have had to start over because, again, this is before the digital era. So she just had like a real culture shock coming to America and LA in particular. And she didn't really fraternize or socialize. And she said when she was making this album, she didn't really listen to music at all. I think it was just the narrative person in her, the communicator in her that wanted to get these things out on the page. For her, music has always been a form of communication. And I think that's what drove her. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh. Hi.
Hello.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
I was curious because Maureen was playing those videos, and I kind of forgot. Like, I remembered the music, but I forgot about the videos and how interesting they were. I know.
They're so
And
good.
I kept getting all these images. You mentioned some of the people who appreciated her afterwards, right? So the, Demi Lovato's and, these people.
Yeah.
But I saw like Britney Spears with the snake video.
Oh,
I saw,
yeah.
right? And then,
Good one,
I
yeah.
saw Sia, that one video where they're stuck in the cage and it's the men versus women with Shia LaBeouf Elastic Heart video. And then I remembered she was God in
Yes,
Dogma.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I'm
There
curious
was.
if you go into any of her like visual choices or style for film. And did she ever do more acting? I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, great question. A little bit. So the first video, of course, was for You Oughta Know. And that one's really interesting because she's in silhouette the entire time. You can't actually tell what she looks like. And so she said that was her only point in this whole album cycle that she was anonymous, and it was great because nobody knew who she was. There was like a sold out show and people were trying to buy tickets from like scalpers, and someone came up to her, didn't know it was Alanis Morissette, trying to like buy a ticket to her show in Denver, I think. So, but then it was the video that came after, which would have been for
You learn?
the one at the parade in Brooklyn. Sorry, I'm
I
blanking
think
on
it's You Learn or Hand in Pocket.
Hand in
Hand in My
Pocket.
Pocket,
Hand in
yeah.
Pocket was the second single, Hand in My Pocket. And she, if you remember that one, it was like the parade, the black and white parade throughout Brooklyn, and she's straight on. And everything changed for her after that because people knew what she looked like. So, and then ironic, she talks about the fact that those were kind of all like her kind of characters, like inside of her, and she associates most with the green, the girl in the green. So if you rewatch the video, you can maybe see why. But yes, she did do more acting. So Dogma, I mean, good God, she was God. Kevin Smith, yeah. But she was on Sex and the City for a little bit, and this like lesbian thing with Sarah Jessica Parker's character, or like they had a makeout session or something, if I remember correctly.
I have not seen that.
She was, yeah, it was something, it was like, Carrie trying it out or whatever with Alanis Morissette.
Classic.
And then she was on Weeds for a little bit. She was on Curb Your Enthusiasm as herself. So she did more acting for sure. Because again, she started as a Nickelodeon star. And
Oh,
you can't do
yes.
that on television.
That was my intro to her.
Yeah,
But I didn't
yeah.
know it at the time.
Yeah, so she kind of towed the line of both, but she hasn't acted in a while. It'd be cool to see her get back into that. Yeah.
She was voice acting for the show The Great North, which is like a
Okay.
Nickelodeon
Oh, yeah.
show.
Yeah.
She plays herself in that.
Yeah.
Cool.
She's
Yeah.
like the girl's, like her imaginary friend. She's like
Amazing.
And she's been doing other stuff. She had like a podcast, and she said that she has a book she's written, and she's been doing it for years. And like, please God, see the light of day, because I'm sure it would be like a new Bible for people. But
And then you can interview her.
please, yeah, Alanis, if you're listening.
Yes. I think we have time for one more question.
I just want about your craft as a writer. I mean, I'm a big fan of just biographies, reading about musicians, since I can't be one to read about them. How do you like start diving into someone's life? Where's your research? How do you like start that process?
Yeah, so the question, in case you didn't hear, was how I kind of start my process of diving into someone's life. Well, I become obsessive, so I'm in that world for a better part of a year. But I think for me, like any book I write, it has to be someone I'm either like personally a fan of and or someone I'm very interested in and want to know the story for myself. And so with Alanis, I was a fan, of course, but I actually really wanted to know the story of all of this. I wanted to know why this album was so huge. You know, we're entering the 30th anniversary. And so I do copious amounts of research. A lot of these books are unofficial, so I don't have access to the artists themselves, but I did interview people in her world, so her early manager and publicist and other people. But I read, watch, like every interview I can find and take her or their words to put into this book so it's authentic and it comes from them. There's a great documentary which is interesting. It's called Jagged. It came out on HBO a couple of years ago that Alanis participated in, but she disavowed towards the end. If I could maybe think why, I think she just felt she shared a little too much and felt a little taken advantage of in that film in terms of what she divulged. So anyway, long story short, I just do a ton of like research into music videos, into all the albums, into interviews, anything I can get my hands on, and kind of it's a work in progress as I go along. So I'm kind of forming my own narrative as I like retain more of that info.
I'll follow up to that one. Have you ever started down a path and then been like, no?
Oh yeah, the Pearl Jam book. So the Pearl Jam book that just came out this week was for their very first show was 35 years ago, and my God, Pearl Jam, like
That's a big.
there's a lot there to unpack. And so I thought it was going to be like a book kind of about their concert history and like interesting moments at shows, but it changed and it became a lot of biography, but my sort of thesis with it was that Pearl Jam is a band for the people. And that came after I was digging into it more and kind of putting the strings together of their whole career, this community they've built of fans. They're like the Grateful Dead of their era, and how they've cultivated that by being very much a cheerleader for humans.
She's like a murder board of like all the connections.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I mean, you can look, there's so many parallels. The Ticketmaster thing, the Vitalogy Foundation, and yeah. I mean, people love them, and you wonder why, because it's like they've been so good to people. So, yeah.
Well, Selena Fragassi, thank you so much
Thanks everyone for coming.
for writing this wonderful book, Alanis, 30 Years of Jagged Little Pill. I recommend all of you go get a copy. And thank you all for coming
Yes, thank
tonight.
you everyone for coming. And your great questions.
Your great questions.
for
Your great
hosting.
writing. Thank you.
Thank you.